We are live. Okay, I'm unmuted. We're live. Happy Monday. This is a special committee on long-term healthcare. Today is September the 11th, 2023. Madam Clerk, would you please call the roll?
Alderwoman Boyd. Alderwoman Sanye.
Present.
Christine Ingracia.
Present.
Danielle Spradley. Jamie Opsel.
Present.
Marjorie Moore.
Present.
Harold Braswell. Chris Beckley. Cassandra Kaufman.
Present.
Lavita Richardson. Cindy Jackson. Kevin Anthony.
Present.
Andrew Lackey. Laura Barrett.
Present.
Kathleen Holmes. Annalise Stover.
Present.
Chair Aldrich.
Present.
Alderwoman Boyd. Danielle Spradley. Harold Braswell. Chris Beckley. Lavita Richardson. Cindy Jackson. Andrew Lackey. Kathleen Holmes. We have 9 present. We have a quorum.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. With that, I would like to make a motion to approve the minutes from August 28, 2023, which was hosted at 5585 Persian SEIU location.
Who was the
Is there a
move?
second? It was moved by Alderwoman of the
Second.
second. Sounds like second by Anthony or Kevin.
Yeah, that's fine.
I said last, Mr. Anthony, excuse me.
Yeah, the guy with the 2 first names. That's
Madam Clerk, could you call the roll?
Alderwoman Boyd. Alderwoman Sanye.
Present.
Taking a vote on the minutes.
Oh, yes.
Aye. You
Aye.
said, okay. Christine Ingracia.
Aye.
Danielle Spradley. Jamie Opsel.
Aye.
Marjorie Moore.
Aye.
Harold Braswell. Chris Beckley. Cassandra Kaufman.
Abstain.
Lavita Richardson. Cindy Jackson. Kevin Anthony.
aye.
Andrew Lackey. Laura Barrett.
Aye.
Kathleen Holmes. Annalise Stover.
Aye.
Chair Aldrich.
Aye.
Alderwoman Boyd. Danielle Spradley. Harold Braswell. Chris Beckley. Lavita Richardson. Cindy Jackson. Andrew Lackey. Kathleen Holmes. We have 8 aye votes and 1 abstain.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. By vote to sustain the motion, we approve the minutes from August 28th, 2023. Next, I will move into committee discussion. So in the chat, and I put in the chat if need to, I can put it in again. I put a link to the working document from the rough draft of the final report that was presented at our last meeting. At the last meeting, we got a lot of input on things that needed to be potentially fleshed out and added. A lot of those comments, if when you pull up the Google Doc first, before I continue, does everyone have access to the Google Doc for the final report edit? Okay, so I will take that no mic turned on from anybody because I can't see the screens outside of Madam Clerk's, that everyone has a Google Doc. So in that Google Doc, again, from the last meeting, there was several comments that was made and ideas from different committee members of what needed to be added to the report. I'm going to pull that up, so I hope it don't cut off my screen. But when you pull up that Google Doc on the right-hand side, you will see from those discussions of what needed to be edited. I know one big thing that we did do during the recommendations is really flush out the recommendations. I know Alderwoman Sonia had brought up how, how do we make the recommendations a little bit more clear so that older people can be potentially ready to file these pieces of legislation. But what does that look like? So we did flesh out a lot of those recommendations. We added, I want to say two, and Laura, please jump in. I think we added some federal, because I don't have it pulled up, some federal recommendations with a Biden report that was recently released. We added that to our recommendations. But we really wanted this meeting to be a moment, because we did have some committee members that was not present at the last meeting. Before we move forward with any report, I think it's critical that every member of the committee have an opportunity to add their input in the process. One thing that the working group, so at the last meeting, a small working group was set up. If anybody wants to be added to the working group, please let me know. It consists of myself, Director Ingracia, Laura, Levita Richardson, as well as Mr. Andrew. All got on a call last week to flush through some of the comments that was made during the committee hearing, as well as comments that was made on the Google Doc to flesh that out. But the working group will be moving forward to try to have another meeting in the next week or so to take comments either from this meeting or comments that's added on the Google Doc to ensure that that's added into the report, as well as we feel at the working group that it's important to get some weigh-in from the building division, the health department, and the Department of Human Services when it comes to the recommendations, and ensure this is something, one, if we make these recommendations actually can be followed and they have the capacity to do it, or just to make sure we're not missing anything. Knowing kind of those three bodies are really important when it comes to moving some of these recommendations forward, at least on the local level. When you get to some of the state recommendations and federal, those are a little different. But the working group will be inviting those three people to try to come in front of us to go over those recommendations that we laid out and to ensure that they actually are doable. So with that, before I continue on, I will open it up to any working group members for any feedback or comments that maybe they wanted to add on, and then just open it up to the larger committee about the report, final report, rough draft. Did Ms. Laura Ingracia, I know Levita is, Ms. Richardson is sick and Mr. Andrews not on. Did you guys want to add any 2 cents to the working group meeting?
No, I would just add that I made some assignments or tagged people with their email addresses with some questions, follow-up questions we had if they had already made comments. I think Marjorie was one and maybe Andrew. So if those folks could just make sure they respond in the document, that will help us finalize what we need to finalize.
I think I was able to get mine in to just a couple minutes ago. I've just got back from vacation. Well, I'm not actually back from vacation yet, but just got back.
Yes, I did see Ms. Moore just added hers in, so I appreciate that, Ms. Moore. And I think Mr. Andrews on vacation, so I'll try to email him separately so we can get that as well. Ms. Laura, did you have anything you want to add?
No, just I think, Marjorie, if you want to put a sentence in there basically referring to the overdiagnosis, I think that would be super helpful. And it seems to me like, you know, that sentence could then refer to the citation that you just put in, which is great. Thank you.
Okay, I do see Ms. Stover hand up, so I will give you the floor.
Hi, I just wanted to make the comment that I've worked with the St. Louis Area Agency on Aging for over 18 years. And throughout that time period, we have contracted with the organization that's now known as Voice, with the long-term care ombudsman, to go into nursing homes, to provide assistance, to go to residents' meetings, to talk to people about residents' rights, to help advocate on behalf of older adults and adults with disabilities that are in nursing homes. And I see language in the recommendations that call for a position either within Human Services or within the Civil Rights Enforcement Agency. And I wonder if instead it could be funding for either, so what we do is we contract with Voice to provide services. So I think having city funding available for a full-time work being done is very much appreciated and needed. But I don't know, I would like the option to either hire or contract for that service.
And could you, Miss, so I'm just clear, are you saying you going beyond the scope of, and the recommendation is talked about hiring like a safety officer, which we still was trying to figure out what is the best house for that position to kind of be in, but someone who could go into some of these nursing homes. Are you saying similar to that, but wanted to be contracted out or hired permanently?
So if there were someone filling that role, they probably would need to be trained by Voice, who currently does extensive training and background checks of volunteers and staff, who then have the knowledge and expertise to go into the homes, to understand the setting, to understand the many state regulations, and to help advocate on behalf of people. So I would say that providing funding to contract for that service would be a great suggestion. In addition, perhaps to a person that's either in the building division or in place of that would be my suggestion.
Okay. And for clarity, this may be an Ingrassia question. If that were to happen, would a certain department director Ingrassia would have to do like a RFP for that if it was contracted out?
Yes.
And we do currently do an RFP for that service. When so I'm likely in November going to be releasing an RFP for fiscal year 25, 26, 27, which will include the long-term care ombudsman service that we've contracted out for decades.
Gotcha. What will, and we don't have to get too in the weeds of this, please make sure you add that in the drive. What do you think would be different from what you guys contract out compared to, I guess, trying to create a permanent position? If not different, are you just making sure that they have the training, like you say, from Voices?
Yes, it would be the additional funding would allow them to hire additional staff to expand that service further, would be what I would think would occur.
And Annalise, so would that be all, that would be all resident based, right? That we're talking about, because Voice doesn't really do anything on the staff side. So this would be, I just want to be sure that we're talking all resident focused.
Yes, resident focused.
So Annalise,
Assisting with complaints, handling complaints, and allowing more funding for staff to be more present in long-term care communities to then help make changes from the inside.
Ms. Laura, I think, go ahead, Ms. Laura.
sorry, Annalise, which recommendation are you referencing? If you could just sort of like tell us which one specifically.
So originally, when I saw it, it was the first city one had suggested a staffing position within Department of Human Services, but then I think that got changed. And now I'm seeing a staffing position within CREA, the Nursing Home Safety Officer position within the Civil Rights Enforcement Agency, responsible for helping residents and workers access appropriate health and safety resources. I don't know if anyone has talked to CREA or if they have experience providing that service.
So that was on, I think, as well on the list when we speak with the Health Department, Human Services and Building Division. We're thinking about which department could do such thing. CREA came up with them being the Civil Rights Enforcement, and some of these things are rights are being violated. So I will say I don't think that's a end all be all department, but as we was looking at it, maybe what may be best for that department to be housed in, that was Korea who came up with it. Understanding that it would, like you say, need maybe the training to do so, but with ongoing conversations with the health department, the building division, and human resources, I think will be helpful to kind of flesh out where that could better be housed.
Yeah, and I think that what we were trying to get to here with that recommendation is a safety officer that could figure out when there's difficult situations, particularly for staff, because there is already the ombudsman position that's looking out for resident safety, and then also there's a recommendation under the state level that's recommending much increased funding for the ombudsman program. So the idea was to create a city level position that would be taking a look at OSHA complaints, other issues that are going on within nursing homes, and giving staff a place to go to. That would be helping them to file the complaints, make sure that dangerous conditions were being reported. And so it does mention residents in there because hopefully this person would also be able to speak with residents, but really the focus was more on staff, and maybe we need to make that recommendation slightly clearer. But I think what we were thinking is basically let's get that position in at the city level that would really help staff folks, and then we'll also advocate strongly for increasing the already existing and excellent ombudsman program. So that was the idea. That was a differentiation. And anybody else who's interested in this, please go ahead and speak up, because I hope I'm being clear enough.
Okay, so I understand what you're saying is that this position focuses on the safety and well-being of the staffing more so.
Yes, it's focusing on the conditions that staff are aware of and can report that are going to affect both residents and staff for sure. I mean, everybody's health is going to be affected, but like when they can see, hey, like during COVID, right? This entire nursing home doesn't have the booties available for folks, and they can then report that. That's something a resident wouldn't necessarily see or be aware of. They might think that this one staff person just doesn't have booties on today, but like it would enable staff to make a complaint about sort of more systemic issues that are going on within the nursing home that they would have knowledge of. And right now, it's sometimes being reported to state, but also staff is just like residents are concerned about retaliation. So this position would also enable folks, like if there was retaliation, they would be able to report that, and it helps staff deal with that, and they would be a real liaison between the state and OSHA and other agencies. So the thought is they also would be gathering information about what is actually happening to the workplace, and sort of like there's a huge shortage of CNAs. That's what part of the problem is. So like it would be directed at that level, and Voice is like already doing a lot of that for residents, which is great, and we want them to do more of it, and we want them to be far better funded than they are right now. So that's basically was the thought around this whole position. It's something actually that we've been advocating for a couple of years.
Before I move on to Vice Chair, I want to make sure that you get to finish, Ms. Annalise. Did that kind of answer your question to that one recommendation?
Yeah, I think I was understanding the recommendation a little differently. So it sounds like, yeah, if it's a OSHA complaint, maybe that is more of like the building division. I haven't seen CREA take that kind of role, but maybe if there have been conversations with CREA in the past about expanding into that area, that would be good to have probably prior to the recommendation.
And I will also, like I said, on top of reaching out to those other agencies, I know CREA is in a transition right now. But I will put that on my list to have that conversation, reach out to Korea and bring that also back to the working group. So that could be part of a bigger email amongst members so we can just be aware as we're fleshing it out what department may be best to house this recommendation position. Appreciate that question, Ms. Annalise. I'm gonna go to Vice Chairman Pam Boyd or Ms. Boyd, Alderwoman Boyd.
I'm kind of confused. So you all are creating a position that's going to report on the side of staff. And if I'm off, because I'm apologizing, I was late. That's going to report on the side of staff of issues, but who are they reporting to? I'm the person you hired, so who do I report these things to?
I think depending on the complaint, if it's a workplace safety issue, they would report it to OSHA. If there's some like folks being underpaid, they could report that to like there's wage theft going on, they could report that to Department of Health. If there's issues with bed bugs, all the stuff that we've talked about already, liaisoning with the Department of Health and Human Services on the state level. So it just basically would be a backup for workers and making sure that these complaints actually get to the appropriate agencies and then that they're followed up on. They just don't end up getting lost and never, taken action on, which we have seen happen with some of the complaints that folks have made in this area to OSHA. Like sometimes they come out and they do a great job, like they find Mary Queen Mother, but that doesn't necessarily always happen. So it's helping the workers to file those complaints, make sure they're filed. And then at the end, of the day, that position would also be able to do an annual report and say, these are the places that are, the safest, and these are the places that aren't as safe. So they would actually be compiling some statistics that would be helpful for folks in terms of information about the healthcare, worker safety conditions, basically.
So they're covering, what is it, certain areas they would cover, certain areas of homes, or I'm just kind of confused? Just the city homes that are in the city? Is it just long-term care homes? Is it senior buildings? I mean, I'm just trying to get clarity.
Sure. And the way it's written right now, it's focused on nursing homes, but it could be expanded if people felt that needed. I think it, in terms of what we actually, the legislation, President Green had mentioned maybe it could be expanded to all essential workers. And so we could actually have not just healthcare workers, but other workers that could be reporting hazardous complaints. I think it remains to be seen how it finally ends up in legislation, but the recommendation of this committee is specifically around nursing homes, right? Because we're charged with long-term care. So that's the way the recommendation is shaped in this particular report, is that it's specifically for long-term care.
And
But,
so I guess,
go
ahead. I'm sorry, Laura.
Oh, that's okay. I was just going to say, but when you all start to debate it and take a look at legislation in the Board of Alders, you might say every worker, who's an essential worker and doesn't have, and is worried about retaliation and worried about safety at the workplace, every worker should have access to the safety officer. So, I think it remains to be seen how you all want to shape it when you get to the Board of Alders.
Okay, because I heard two different things. When you say essential workers, so that means anybody that falls under that realm of essential workers. So that could be restaurants, that could be hospitals, that could be nursing homes. And so now I'm confused because we're a long-term care committee. And so we're not just focusing on long-term care. And so my other confusion was with long-term care, as I had talked before, that's under the state's venue. So that's why I'm like, okay, so is it apples or oranges? Because it seems like we're mixing the two. So if it's essential workers, that's anybody that falls under the realm of St. Louis City, which I'm understanding that that safety person will be involved, which is a lot for one person. So that's
Right.
what I'm looking at. And then two, I keep looking at this $15. Laura, I don't know why y'all keep putting that in front of me, because I keep saying y'all shortchanging these people. But $15 is not a lot to be paying somebody for what we're asking them to cover. So that's what I'm just kind of confused. I don't want us to mix apples and oranges. So if we're focusing on long-term care, we have to make sure that the state is in tune, and I agree with Laura that they need to pay some of these salary for this person, because in long-term care facilities that's really trying to do what's right, they normally have a person set up in those buildings that's working with the employees to help. Again, I repeat myself, they're really about what's right. And so as Laura and I know, we have a lot that's not about what's right. And so they don't have those team of employees that's able to make those statements or recommendations to those owners or the administrators. So I just don't want us to mix apples and oranges. So if it's for all essential workers, that's totally different than long-term care. So that's what we need to be clear, because that means that we're looking at the like I said, the restaurants, the hospitals, you know, all other service industries of safety. So we just need to be clear on what we're trying to accomplish and what role they will play. And the $15 is not going to be that number.
Okay. I hear you. Actually, our union is advocating for 25 now. That's
There you go. There you go. That's what I'm talking about.
Yeah, we're going for 25 plus retirement. That's the
Okay.
new fight.
Y'all
But
listen.
so and the way the recommendation is written, it's just specifically for long-term care. I was just saying it's you know, you all can make some other decisions later when you get to board of aldermen. But yes, in this report, it's talking about the safety issues, connecting to OSHA, connecting to the state, connecting to Center for Medicaid Services, to really make sure that these things that are going on in our nursing homes, which are making Missouri nursing homes some of the worst in the country, that stuff gets reported and gets corrected, and we start to have, you know, federal and state help to correct some of the problems, instead of, oh yeah, we don't have enough, you know, surveyors, we're not gonna even bother doing. Yep, okay, that was a really gross overstatement. Please strike that. I didn't mean that. But it would enable us to get the help from the state regulators that we really need.
Okay, so what, if I could ask, what does the bill specify that we're looking at doing? What does it state? Does it state essential workers, or does it state long-term care workers? Because I heard two different groups.
So in the
So right now, go ahead.
okay, I was gonna say if I could jump in. So and it's in the chat, Alderwoman, I can put it in there again. And I just did. So in the chat, which we are added to the Google Doc, the final recommendation, these are not necessarily in bill format. These are just recommendation from the legislation that before me was charged with of creating this committee. And what the recommendation we're talking about, you and Ms. Laura's talking about, is under the city part. Is probably towards the end of the page, about page 9, the city recommendations. We did city, state, and federal, and it's about the third or fourth. It's about the fourth point. Just is a recommendation, not saying it has to be acted on, but it would, you know, if acted on, it would come from members of the board of aldermen, but to create that position. And right now, the wording is only around, from what we were charged from the the resolution that was passed. It is just looking at a long-term healthcare. Ms. Laura just put in there the actual wording of that one recommendation, but it is just for long-term healthcare workers, recommendation that a position will be added to be able to kind of help staffing when it comes to them not necessarily the operators following the law.
So again, because now we're talking about pay, salary. So what part will the state play in this?
Well, this would be the way that I look at it, and this would come on work from the alder person if they were to pick up the recommendation. You know, like the mayor just created that new office of American something. But this would, in my opinion, this would be coming from a city position that we would be creating, which we would have to figure out what that salary looks like, have conversations with Paul Payne to see if that money is available in certain departments, knowing that some departments don't use all their money at the end of the year. Could this position be created with some of the extra money that goes to general revenue?
So again, my question is, so why aren't we tapping into the state? Because these are state mandated buildings. So why aren't we tapping into the state to pick up a piece of this? Why are we absorbing all of this cost?
I will let Laura jump in and others that was part of it. My 2 cents would be is with the state already unfunding long-term healthcare facilities, at least personally don't know or confident that they would create this one position. And we're focusing it on the city with this committee doing the idea of focus on the city. They would probably try to do it more statewide. So similar to like how the building division can go in and do siting, how the health department can go in and do siting, but this will be a similar position to both of those. That would be how those departments have the ability to go to these state facilities to be able to go in to ensure that the staff are getting the necessary tools that they need or following the OSHA laws and stuff like that. I don't think opposed to maybe offering that amendment also in the state as well, but looked at it from, since we didn't heard from some facilities and people that work in those facilities, how can we do this from the city level? How can we fund this from the city level?
That's fine, but I guess my thoughts are, you are looking at right now, we have dollars. I'm looking at down the future. And so I don't see where the city will have those dollars. Yeah, people say, okay, everybody don't spend all their money. But again, as Laura said, they're pushing for $25 an hour. So I don't see where the city should be toting that whole responsibility, because the city is going, that safety person is going to be the connection to, and really you need to look at, we're assisting the state because we're helping build the communication and the streamlining the information to the OSHA department, to the mental health, to everybody in the state. So we're assisting them. So I mean, I don't have a problem with the position. I just don't think that the city should be the one that carries that load by themselves. I think that the state needs to play a role. The state got money. They can find money too in departments that they're not spending, that they can contribute to this to assist them in what they need to do. And so we can bring it to them as a pilot and say, use St. Louis as your pilot to see if this position will work to help improve the lives of the employees of these buildings. So, I mean, it's just a suggestion. I don't have all the answers, but I just think I can't keep relying on the city, because eventually when you keep taking water out the well's gonna get dry eventually. And so that's not what I want to do. I think the state needs to pick up some of that.
I see a couple hands. I'll just say, I think that's kind of the beauty of, with it being a recommendation, if an alder person were to pick it up, that would Because clearly it's a recommendation that needs fleshing out to turn into legislation. That could be at least work on our end as Alder people to connect with our state reps to see as they go into session in January if money could be allocated, like you say, for a pilot program for such need to do so. I see Director Ingracia hand up first. I'll go to Director Ingracia.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and Madam Vice Chair, thank you for bringing up some smart points. I just wanted to make sure that you did see that there were recommendations to the state, and I think that, you know, our focus here has always been on what we can do as a city, because that's what we have control over, but we also know that we're not going to get to where we need to be without the support of the state and federal government. And so there's call outs in the recommendations for the Board of Aldermen to draft resolutions that get sent to both the state and federal government, outlining sort of what we think is important for them to start focusing on. And we've been really lucky that we have representation from Congressman Bush's office attending most of these meetings, and some connections we've made with folks at the state level through our various members of this committee and through testimony of individuals who have come to speak with us. So I think it's something that's definitely on the forefront of our minds. And I'm glad you reminded us that this is not something we're going to be able to take on alone.
Thank you, Director Ingracia. Next, I'm gonna go to Ms. Opsel, Ms. Jamie Opsel.
Hi, thank you. Just piggyback on that comment. Actually, Annalise Stover and I are at the State Conference on Aging as we speak. We just stepped away, and I had the chance to discuss this with the Deputy Director at the Division of Senior and Disability Services about what's going on in St. Louis with private equity firms, you know, purchasing these nursing homes. And they right now, the state has a what they call a master plan on aging, and there is a subcommittee that's focused in on long-term care, and they are looking for policy recommendations. So this would be another great opportunity to move this report forward to that committee, because it, like you were saying, this could be a model to help other areas of the state too, as we're not the only place in the state that's probably dealing with this situation. So that was just the one comment. And then the other question I have is, I get what you're trying to do in closing the loop, Laura. That makes a lot of sense. And I keep going back to, I just don't understand the process for how we close the loop now with adult protective services when there's a hotline at the state that doesn't seem things don't seem to change. And I just hoping that Marjorie and or Annalise could help me understand that process, because we had the issue with the raw sewage going on for months and it didn't change. And I don't understand, is there anything that we can do to help close that loop as well? I know I keep asking the same question.
Marjorie, do you have any suggestions about closing that loop? I think part of the issue that I've seen from the outside is that the state is short-staffed. And so when you make a hotline call, hotline reports, sometimes you hear back about what occurs. Sometimes we're asked to be involved when they go out. Sometimes we do not receive a response. So I know in terms of at the state actually has a long-term care ombudsman at the state that works on behalf of nursing home residents and helps provide guidance to the local ombudsman. So Marjorie, if you could speak more to that.
Yeah, so I think one of the big challenges with the hotline right now is definitely the underfunding and that they're just completely understaffed.
Really quick, Miss Marjorie.
Yeah.
If not, that's fine. Are you able to turn your camera on or?
I am not. I don't have a camera today. Sorry.
No, that's fine. Go ahead.
So I think that's the biggest challenge right now is that they're they're really, really understaffed. One of the things that we're starting to see a lot of is that what we believe are really legitimate complaints are being unsubstantiated, which means basically there's not enough documentation or not enough proof that the thing happened for them to be able to cite those things. So that's also really concerning. And I don't know why that's happening, because that doesn't seem to be an understaffing issue because they're coming out and looking at it. But that's something that we're starting to see a lot of lately for hotline calls, which is really concerning for our resident rights side of things. So, Jamie, I don't really have a lot of good answers other than, recommending that, the state fully funds that office and that they get enough staff in there. The closing the loop piece can be hard sometimes because resident privacy and things often precludes or keeps them from telling the person who made the complaint what actually happened, because it may not be somebody who has the right to have that information. So that becomes really, really tricky as well. But oftentimes we don't even hear what happens, which is frustrating.
Can't probably add to that conversation. I will say in the report though, under state, we do talk about as far as recommendation, filling current vacant nursing facility positions, as well as the governor recently vetoed $2.2 million to long care programs. So those two are in, if that may help kind of what you're talking about, Ms. Jamie. And I know Ms. Moore talked about it's filling some of these positions. I know that is one of the recommendations under the state, as well as that 2.2 million that was vetoed. Note, veto session is happening this Wednesday. Call your state representatives. Side plug, but those are in the recommendations. Did you have anything else, Ms. Jamie, at all? I can't see the camera, so I'll take the mute as you're good to go. Any other questions from committee members on the rush draft of the report? Can't see any heads besides mine. Go ahead, Laura. Laura,
Okay,
and
so Marjorie is next, I think. So I just wanted to say, I think that actually our recommendations on the state level and the federal level are pretty substantial, because we're following, on the city level, we're kind of doing a few things that haven't been done before, and that's why they're a little bit more interesting or innovative or new things that has not been done at the city level. But on the state level and the federal level, we're following up on initiatives and on policy directions that are already out there. And so I think that the very substantial funding that we're recommending and the recommendation about hiring all of the state surveyors, et cetera, I think are pretty strong on the state level. And then also the money follows the person. If we could actually get that policy, and that would be amazing, because it would increase people's freedom and would increase deinstitutionalization. And on the federal level, President Biden is just moving, right? I mean, there's some very interesting things that he has recommended in terms of staffing standards and financial accountability that have just come out, right? And so our supporting them at the city level and at the state level, I think is really important. So that both of those things that he's recommended could actually really revolutionize a lot of the field and also take care of some of that private equity issue that we spoke about earlier. So I think our recommendations, I feel really good about them in a bunch of ways, because they are very substantial, I think, and then get to every single level. But anyway, I'll yield the floor to my friend Marjorie.
Ms. Marjorie, you have the floor.
Yeah, so I think two things. One, I do want to point out that money that follows the person does exist in Missouri. Annalisa, I don't know if that flows through your office or not, or if that's somewhere else, but I know it is a thing.
At one point in time, the AAAs across Missouri, as well as the SILs, were both doing the work. So we do have experience doing it. We contracted with Hope Housing Options Provided for the Elderly to transition people out of nursing homes. And we were transitioning out, people who had been pretty independent for years, but didn't have the ability to leave the nursing home because they did not have a deposit, first month's rent. They did not have the ability to buy a bed, a microwave. So unfortunately, the state changed the way that they were structuring the contract. And so currently the CILS, the Centers for Independent Living, are the only ones providing that service, but Paraquad is providing that service in the city, and it is a very helpful program. It actually had a name change, so it's no longer Money Follows the Person. It's now Show Me Home, a Money Follows the Person program. So I'll copy and paste a link to those services here. But I would just echo Marjorie's comments about how, there are many people that live in nursing homes that do not need 24-hour care, but could be assisted in a community where they could be more independent. And I would support any positive comments in the report about the program.
And I know from talking with my team that program has a pretty long wait list because we refer people to that all the time. So anything around that one of increasing funding for that or support for that or anything like that, I think would be really, really helpful because it's a really great program. And then I know that from looking at the report, it looks like we have kind of left out some of the stuff about the public administrator office and guardianship office because we were never able to get the public administrator to come talk with us. Although I do feel like that is a really important piece of this puzzle. A lot of folks get put into these facilities for mental health reasons and then get left there because our system doesn't have enough people in it to actually carry through their cases. So I'm a little concerned of moving forward with it without a recommendation about that. And I don't know about the rest of you. I know that we've had a lot of meetings, but I would still love to hear from somebody from that office because I think it's a huge piece of this puzzle.
I will make note of that, Ms. Moore, and see what we can do with either trying to reach out to somebody, potentially have a quick meeting, or even if they could submit written testimony to the group so that we can potentially have that since that is at your request. I did see Ms. Jamie hand up. Did you have a comment, Ms. Jamie?
I actually had a question for Cassandra Kaufman. I was curious to see if the community mental health centers also participate in a program similar to the Money Follows the Person for people with severe mental illness that are in nursing homes. If there's any capacity with community mental health centers to get to work with clients who are in nursing homes back into the community. I just didn't know.
Not that I'm familiar with, but that doesn't necessarily mean that it does not exist, but I've never heard of anything similar to that program. And I would also support Marjorie Moore's recommendation if we can get the public administrator's opinion, because I think that's what's driving a number of people in guardianship with severe mental illness into skilled nursing facilities rather than into less restrictive environments.
I agree. Thank you, Cassandra.
Mr. Chairman, I have a note. Does anybody know if Sean Rapp is still the public administrator?
Sean Rapp.
He is? Okay. All right. I'll reach out to him. The city's website doesn't have his name on there any longer for some reason, but I do have. And I've had difficulty in the past reaching out directly to that office, but I have his cell number. So with your permission, Mr. Chair, I can reach out to him and copy you on an email to see if we can get some time with him.
Yeah, I appreciate that, Director Ingrassia. If you can do that, that'll be good. And I would, I'm also willing to have him come in front of the committee if that's what members want. Of course, it would be one of our Monday meetings, but as we're fleshing out the recommendation, I will try to also schedule that in at the same time so we can meet with him, get questions from him, and maybe see if there's some ads that can be put in from his comments that could be kind of put into the recommendations, as well as any information that's above the recommendations. So I appreciate that, Director Ingracia. Any other questions or comments from committee members? So with that, I will say, I know that the working group will continue to meet, if not this week or the following week, to again try to edit as much as the rough draft. I think we will put like a little small pin in it and not complete it fully until we can maybe try to get the city administrator to come in front, but we'll try to plug as many of the things that a lot of the members said that need to be edited, from grammar to punctuations to future recommendations. I know the second stage that is not part of this, and also I want to appreciate Director Ingracia for taking on, because Board of Aldermen reports usually have a special like table of contents and acknowledgements and stuff like that. And Director is going to help us with that. So that will be kind of at the beginning of the report. It's just a formatting system that the Board of Aldermen does. So that needs to be edited in. So please be on the lookout when that is edited in. I'll make sure the committee gets an email to be aware of that. And as soon as I hear back from Mr. Sean, we'll try to respond back with the committee members to see if one of these Mondays can work. The second phase, like we talked about, will be a kind of a design element. I know we wanted to get workers and residents' voices kind of involved in that. So I think after the editing, even understanding that that won't be the final version, because we'll try to get Mr. Sean's input, we'll kind of move on with the design element of the recommendation package, so that there's also a little bit more of a human element to it, and not just a lot of great information and recommendations, but bringing personal people's stories and the recommendations and report to life. And then I would say when the group finally, as a group, when we do finally vote it out before we send it to the board, we'll work with members to figure out what a media outreach advisory may look like, if it's a press conference, or what that may look like amongst us, so that all this hard work in the report can be not just put out to the board, but so that it can be out there in the media and they know that these reports exist and all the hard work that went into it, and highlighting a lot of the recommendations that will be in the report. So right now we're still in the phase one of it as we're editing the report. And the working group, like I said, will meet next week to finalize what, please, everyone, please look over it again. Please add comments to it in the Google Doc so that we can make sure that that's in there. Pending meeting with Mr. Sean, the city administrator, we will send that out as not a final copy, but just with all the edits put in so people can see it. The design phase, like I say, will move along with that as the editing thing, part of it's wrapping up. And then the media part is kind of towards the end as we finalize the report as a whole body. Any more input or discussion on the committee discussion far as the report? If not seeing any, I will move to announcement. Only announcement I wanted to make today is 9/11. So for ones watching, and since it's out there and the web view of things, acknowledge all of our first responders in New York City and family members that have individuals that was there that day on 9/11. That either are no longer with us, and the ones that are still with us that fought that fight for our freedom. So please show love to our first responders, even here in the city of St. Louis, as they work very hard to keep our city safe and keep us safe. But definitely want to acknowledge the ones that we lost on 9/11. Did anyone have any other announcements? If not, just stay tuned. When Director Ingracia get with me on a schedule for Mr. Sean, I will try to schedule a meeting so that we can meet on a Monday to get his input and testimony, so that we can add that to the recommendations the working group will continue to work on. So please put in input in the Google Doc. But if seeing no more comments or input from members, Madam Clerk, could you excuse all members who is not present today?
Will do.
Thank you. And with that, I'll take a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
If you guys want to stay around, that's fine too. Is there a second?
A second.
Gotcha. With that, meeting is adjourned. Thank you all. Have a great week and look forward to seeing you soon.